a narcissist realizes that someone has truly broken free from their grip, they experience a kind of psychological crisis. Their need for control, validation, and emotional supply is so deeply ingrained that losing it sends them into a state of desperation. The very thing they fear most, being ignored, irrelevant, or powerless, has become their reality. Without someone to manipulate, to provoke, or to extract energy from, they begin to unravel. Their carefully constructed facade of superiority begins to crack, revealing the deep insecurity and emptiness that they have worked so hard to hide. At first, they may refuse to believe that they have truly lost control. They will test boundaries, sending small messages or trying indirect ways to re-enter your life. They might use mutual friends, social media, or even seemingly innocent encounters to gauge whether they can still influence you. If they sense even the slightest opening, a reaction, a response, any sign that you still care, they will exploit it fully. They will use that as proof that their grip over you remains intact, even if only in a small way. If those subtle tactics fail, their behavior may escalate. They might attempt to create a crisis to draw you back in. They could fabricate emergencies, claim they are in distress, or attempt to stir up drama that forces you to interact with them. They understand that empathy can be a weakness in others, and they will use it against you. If they cannot regain control through admiration, they will settle for pity. If they cannot be adored, they will choose to be feared. Any emotional engagement, even negative, serves their purpose. As more time passes and they realize that their influence is truly fading, they begin to feel the weight of their own emptiness. Narcissists are not self-sufficient individuals. They do not have a stable internal world that provides them with confidence or reassurance. Their self-worth is entirely external, meaning that when they lose someone who once provided them with energy, they experience a kind of identity crisis. They no longer have a mirror reflecting back their desired image, and without that, they struggle to define who they are. This is when some narcissists enter a state of what is known as narcissistic collapse. This is not the same as genuine self-reflection or growth, but rather a temporary state of extreme distress caused by the loss of control. They may become depressed, withdrawn, or even paranoid. They might lash out at those around them, searching for someone to blame for their pain. Some may go through a period of self-destruction, engaging in reckless behavior, substance abuse, or impulsive decisions in an attempt to distract themselves from their feelings of inadequacy. However, narcissists rarely stay in this collapsed state for long. Rather than learning from their experiences, they seek out new sources of supply as quickly as possible. They will look for someone else to manipulate, someone new to validate their self-image. They might throw themselves into a new relationship, a new social circle, or a new project that allows them to regain the sense of superiority they feel they have lost. The cycle repeats itself. Because without external validation, they do not know how to function. Even as they move on to new targets, they may still attempt to monitor or influence the person who has escaped them. They might keep tabs on your life from a distance, watching your social media, asking about you through mutual acquaintances, or even attempting to spread false narratives to regain some sense of control. If they feel that you are thriving without them, it is a direct wound to their ego. The idea that someone could not only leave but be happier without them is something they cannot accept. If they see that you are indifferent to their existence, it is the ultimate defeat. Narcissists want to believe they are unforgettable, irreplaceable, and deeply significant to the lives of others. When they realize they have become just another part of someone's past, they struggle to cope. They may tell themselves stories to protect their ego, convincing themselves that you were never truly important to them, that they left you rather than the other way around, or that you will eventually come crawling back. What they fail to understand is that the person who has broken free has gained something invaluable: clarity. Once the fog of manipulation has lifted, once the emotional chaos has settled, it becomes clear just how much the narcissist relied on confusion, fear, and control to maintain their power. Their tactics only work when someone is emotionally entangled with them. When that entanglement is severed completely, when there is no longer a reaction, no longer a sense of obligation, the narcissist is left with nothing. For the first time, they are forced to face themselves without a buffer, without an audience, without an emotional supply to sustain them. And for a narcissist, that is the one thing they cannot bear. When a narcissist senses that they are losing control over someone, they do not simply accept it and move on. Instead, they escalate their efforts to regain dominance, often resorting to increasingly extreme tactics. Their need for control is not just a preference. It is a necessity for maintaining their fragile sense of self. Losing control over someone who was once a reliable source of emotional supply is a direct threat to their carefully constructed reality, and they will do whatever it takes to pull that person back into their orbit. One of the most common tactics narcissists use when they feel someone slipping away is hoovering. Named after the vacuum cleaner brand, hoovering refers to the narcissist's attempts to suck you back into the relationship. They may suddenly reach out with affectionate messages, reminiscing about the good times and making grand promises of change. They might claim they have had an epiphany, that they now understand what went wrong and are ready to do better. This is not a genuine transformation, but a calculated move to regain control. As soon as they have successfully pulled you back in, the cycle of manipulation resumes. If charm and false promises fail, they may shift to guilt tripping. They will play the victim, portraying themselves as lost, broken, or suffering without you. They might claim that they cannot function without your support, that they are depressed, or even hint at self-harm to elicit sympathy. This is another form of manipulation designed to make you feel responsible for their well-being. A narcissist does not want to change. They want to ensure that you continue to serve as their emotional supply. When neither love bombing nor guilt tripping works, they often resort to anger and intimidation. They may lash out with insults, threats, or attempts to damage your reputation. They might spread rumors, turn mutual friends against you, or try to sabotage aspects of your life. This shift from pleading to aggression is a sign of their desperation. When they can no longer lure you back with kindness, they attempt to punish you for walking away. Their goal is to make you regret leaving, to make your life so difficult without them that returning seems like the easier option. Narcissists are also known for using smear campaigns as a means of regaining control. They will twist the narrative, painting themselves as the innocent party while portraying you as the villain. They may accuse you of things they themselves have done, projecting their own toxic behaviors onto you. They will try to turn others against you, ensuring that even if you distance yourself physically, you still feel the impact of their presence through social consequences. This tactic is meant to isolate you, forcing you into a position where you feel you have no choice but to re-engage with them. Another method they use is triangulation, bringing a third party into the dynamic to provoke jealousy, competition, or insecurity. They might flaunt a new relationship, emphasizing how happy they are without you in an effort to make you doubt your decision to leave. They might use mutual friends, family members, or even social media to send indirect messages meant to provoke an emotional reaction. Their goal is to pull you back into their game, even if only to prove a point. Any reaction, even anger or resentment, feeds their need for validation and reaffirms that they still have an impact on your emotions. If all else fails, they may resort to stalking, harassment, or more extreme forms of control. They might show up uninvited, bombard you with messages, or find ways to insert themselves into your life through work, social circles, or even legal means. They do not respect boundaries because boundaries represent a loss of control. The more firmly you enforce distance, the more erratic their behavior can become. This is why it is crucial to recognize their patterns early and avoid any engagement that could give them the opening they are looking for. One of the reasons their attempts to regain control become so intense is because they are not just losing a person, they are losing a mirror that reflects back their desired image. Without your reactions, they struggle to maintain their sense of importance. They need you to validate their existence, whether through admiration, fear, or even hatred. Indifference is what truly threatens them because it renders them powerless. The cycle of escalation is predictable because a narcissist's biggest fear is irrelevance. As they realize they no longer hold the influence they once did, their actions become more frantic, more aggressive, and more transparent. The key to resisting these tactics is to remain firm in your boundaries, recognizing that every attempt to pull you back in is not about love, remorse, or change. It is about control. The more you distance yourself, the more desperate they become, revealing the true extent of their dependency on others for their sense of self. Narcissists depend on a constant supply of emotional energy from those around them. This supply is not just about admiration and praise. It includes any reaction they can provoke, whether positive or negative. They feed off your attention, your emotions, and your engagement with them. As long as they can keep you emotionally invested, they remain in control. However, when you remove yourself from their orbit, when you stop responding, stop engaging, and create real distance, they begin to starve. The longer they go without their supply, the weaker they become. Narcissists cannot self-regulate their emotions in a healthy way. They do not have an internal reservoir of confidence, self-worth, or security. Instead, they rely entirely on external validation and the ability to manipulate those around them to feel powerful. Without an emotional supply, they begin to experience intense feelings of emptiness, restlessness, and even paranoia. They may become desperate, trying every trick in the book to regain access to the person who once provided them with energy. If charm and manipulation do not work, they may resort to threats, guilt-tripping, or even rage. Their entire identity is built on external reinforcement. They need people around them to mirror back their desired self-image. If they see themselves as superior, they need others to treat them as such. If they see themselves as a victim, they need others to pity them. When distance is created and their usual sources of supply are no longer available, their carefully crafted sense of self begins to collapse. They may start to feel small, insignificant, or even irrelevant, feelings they cannot tolerate. This emotional starvation often leads to a form of psychological withdrawal. Narcissists may become erratic, unstable, or even aggressive when they realize they are losing control over someone who was once a reliable source of attention and emotional energy. They will frantically seek to replace that supply, either by hoovering the person back into their life or by finding a new source as quickly as possible. This is why many narcissists jump from one relationship to another without pause. They are not looking for love or connection. They are searching for someone to fill the void left behind when their last source of supply walked away. Narcissists experience boredom and agitation when they are not actively manipulating or extracting emotions from others. They do not have a rich internal world, so they rely on external stimulation to keep themselves occupied. If they are not receiving admiration, provoking arguments, or controlling someone's emotions, they feel lost. They may try to distract themselves with work, hobbies, or superficial relationships, but these are not enough to sustain them in the long run. They need a deeply engaged source of emotional supply to feel alive. Over time, the lack of supply causes them to spiral. They may cycle through different emotional states, from rage to self-pity to desperation. They may attempt to create chaos just to elicit a reaction from someone. Some narcissists resort to spreading rumors, making dramatic social media posts, or even fabricating crises to get attention. They believe that if they can pull you back into their world, even through anger or pity, they will regain control and their sense of power. Narcissists may also begin to experience narcissistic collapse, a state where their usual defense mechanisms no longer work. When they can no longer manipulate others into providing them with validation, they may sink into depression, paranoia, or deep insecurity. They may lash out at those around them, blame others for their declining emotional state, or isolate themselves in an attempt to regain their sense of superiority. However, isolation is their greatest weakness. Without an audience, without people to manipulate, without reactions to feed off, they are left alone with their own emptiness. Many narcissists fear being forgotten or becoming irrelevant more than anything else. They thrive on the idea that they are central to the lives of others, that they are important, special, or irreplaceable. When someone removes themselves completely, it shatters this illusion. They may obsess over why they were abandoned, what went wrong, and how they can regain control. This obsession can drive them to extreme behaviors, from stalking and harassment to suddenly showing up in a person's life under the pretense of reconciliation. The longer they go without supply, the more desperate they become. Some narcissists will try to reinvent themselves, adopting new personas or interests to attract new sources of attention. Others may sink into self-destructive habits, using substances, reckless behavior, or dangerous relationships to fill the void. They will do almost anything to avoid sitting with the reality that without external validation, they feel empty, unimportant, and powerless. This slow unraveling is why distance is such a powerful tool against narcissists. It is not just about physical separation, it is about emotional and psychological disengagement. When they realize that their usual tactics no longer work, that they can no longer extract reactions or control the narrative, their world begins to crumble. The energy they once had, the ability to manipulate, to provoke, to dominate, starts to fade. Without a reliable source of supply, they weaken, becoming shadows of the grandiose figures they once pretended to be. A narcissist's identity is not built on internal confidence or self-assurance, but on external validation. Their sense of self-worth is entirely dependent on how others perceive them, which is why they go to such great lengths to control the narrative around them. They create a carefully constructed image of superiority, charm, intelligence, or power, and they need a constant stream of external reinforcement to maintain that illusion. Without validation from others, they begin to feel empty, uncertain, and deeply insecure, which is something they cannot tolerate. This is why narcissists surround themselves with people who provide them with admiration, attention, and emotional reactions. They carefully curate their social circles, ensuring that they have sources of supply who will affirm their self-intent. They seek out relationships that allow them to be seen as the dominant figure, the one who is admired, envied, or feared. Every interaction is a means to reinforce their superiority and suppress their underlying feelings of inadequacy. Because their identity is externally constructed, they are highly sensitive to how they are perceived. Any criticism, rejection, or perceived slight threatens to shatter the fragile foundation of their self-worth. This is why they react so aggressively to even the slightest hint of disapproval. They cannot simply brush off criticism because their self-image is not built on an internal sense of confidence. It is propped up by the opinions of others. If those opinions shift, their identity starts to crack. When someone close to them withdraws, ignores them, or refuses to engage in their games, it is a direct attack on their constructed reality. They rely on your reactions to affirm their significance. If they provoke you and you respond with anger, sadness, or frustration, they feel powerful. If they flatter you and you respond with admiration, they feel validated. But if you withdraw completely, offering no emotional response, they are left with nothing to sustain their sense of self. They are forced to confront their own emptiness, which is an unbearable experience for them. Their entire world is built on perception management. They do not just want to be successful, they want others to see them as successful. They do not just want to be in control, they want others to recognize their power. This is why they go to great lengths to craft an image that supports their idealized version of themselves. They will manipulate stories, exaggerate achievements, and surround themselves with people who reinforce their self-perception. They carefully filter what they show to the world, ensuring that only the most flattering aspects of their life are on display. Social media, for example, is a tool that many narcissists use to control their image. They will post pictures that make them appear happy, successful, or adored by others. They will craft narratives that paint them as the hero or the victim, depending on what serves their needs at the moment. They rely on likes, comments, and social approval to maintain their fragile sense of worth. If they sense that people are losing interest or that they are not receiving the admiration they crave, they will manufacture situations to draw attention back to themselves. When someone exits their life without playing into their manipulation, it is a major blow to their constructed identity. They cannot process the idea that someone might walk away without regret or longing. They need to believe that they are indispensable, that their presence is so powerful that others cannot bear to be without them. When distance is created and they are unable to extract validation, their self-inhaled begins to deteriorate. This is why narcissists often react with desperation when they feel someone slipping away. They may suddenly shower you with attention, attempting to pull you back in through charm and false promises. If that does not work, they may shift to anger, insults, or even smear campaigns to regain a sense of control. Their goal is not necessarily to keep you in their life for genuine reasons, but to ensure that they are still being acknowledged. Even a negative reaction is better than being ignored because it reinforces their significance. Narcissists also struggle with a deep-seated fear of abandonment, though they will never admit it. They need others to affirm their existence, and when people start distancing themselves, they are left with a void they cannot fill on their own. They may try to replace their lost sources of validation quickly, seeking out new relationships or attention from others, but deep down, they are aware that their power over the person who left them has diminished. This is a terrifying realization for them because it means they are not as invincible as they pretend to be. When a narcissist loses control over someone who once provided them with validation, they experience what is known as a narcissistic injury. This is a deep emotional wound that occurs when their grandiose self is threatened. They may react with rage, attempting to destroy the person who has walked away, or they may sink into self-pity, painting themselves as the victim in an effort to gain sympathy from others. Either way, their identity is shaken because they can no longer rely on external affirmation to uphold their carefully constructed illusion. Distance disrupts a narcissist's manipulation because their control is fundamentally tied to access. They rely on immediate interaction to monitor your emotions, adjust their tactics, and ensure that their influence over you remains strong. When you are physically close, they can gauge your expressions, listen to your tone, and respond in real time to maintain their hold over you. Their manipulation is a fluid, ever-adapting strategy that requires constant feedback. Without access to your reactions, their ability to control the narrative weakens, and their influence over you begins to diminish. One of the most effective ways narcissists manipulate others is through gaslighting. This psychological tactic involves making you doubt your own perceptions, memories, and even your sanity. When they can see you and interact with you regularly, they have endless opportunities to reinforce their version of reality. They can quickly counter your statements, twist your words, and use subtle cues like eye rolls or dismissive gestures to make you question yourself. But when distance is introduced, their ability to immediately override your thoughts is reduced. Without their presence constantly reinforcing their distorted version of events, your mind has a chance to clear and the confusion they created starts to fade. Another major tool narcissists use to maintain control is emotional volatility. They thrive on pushing and pulling, creating an emotional roller coaster that keeps you invested in the relationship. One moment they offer love and admiration, and the next they withdraw it, leaving you desperate to regain their approval. This cycle works best when you are within reach because they can sense exactly when to withdraw affection and when to reintroduce it to keep you hooked. When you create distance, their ability to regulate this cycle weakens. They can no longer read your every move, which makes it harder for them to execute the perfect balance of reward and punishment that keeps you emotionally tethered. Narcissists also use triangulation to manipulate, bringing a third party into the dynamic to create competition, jealousy, or insecurity. They might compare you to an ex, a friend, or even a stranger to make you feel like you are not good enough. When they have direct access to you, they can deliver these comparisons subtly through conversation, facial expressions, or even social media interactions designed to provoke a reaction. However, when distance is introduced, their ability to monitor your response is greatly diminished. If you are not physically present, they cannot immediately gauge how their manipulation is affecting you, making their efforts far less effective. Proximity allows narcissists to enforce their reality by controlling your environment. They dictate how you interpret events, what information you receive, and even who you interact with. They often isolate their targets by subtly or overtly discouraging contact with friends and family. This isolation ensures that their version of reality remains unchallenged. When you create distance, however, their grip on your environment weakens. You begin to have access to different perspectives, unfiltered conversations, and external validation that helps break the illusion they have built. This exposure to reality chips away at the mental framework they work so hard to construct. The emotional leash they used to keep you tethered also begins to break when distance is established. Narcissists rely on an immediate emotional response to gauge their power. If they make you cry, get angry, or feel guilty, they know they still have control. Physical presence allows them to escalate or de-escalate situations based on what is most effective at the moment. When you remove yourself from their immediate influence, they lose the ability to read and adjust to your emotions in real time. This makes it harder for them to manipulate you effectively, as they are now operating in the dark, unsure of how you are feeling or thinking. A narcissist also thrive on predictability. They rely on knowing your habits, routines, and emotional triggers to keep you under control. If you always respond to their texts, always answer their calls, or always react to their provocations, they can manipulate you with ease. When distance is introduced, unpredictability enters the equation. They no longer have instant access to your reactions, which forces them to guess. This creates frustration and anxiety for them because they are no longer in the position of control they once held. The more unpredictable you become, the weaker their ability to manipulate you becomes. They will often try to circumvent distance by finding new ways to insert themselves into your life. They may flood you with messages, attempt to provoke a reaction through social media, or even show up unexpectedly. These are attempts to reestablish their influence and remind you of their presence. If they can pull you back into an interaction, even a negative one, they regain some measure of control. The more you engage, the more they can resume their manipulation tactics. This is why distance must be maintained consistently, without giving them opportunities to reestablish their hold. Without access to you, their strategies begin to fail. Their words lose power, their tactics become ineffective, and their presence in your mind starts to fade. The more distance you create, the more their manipulation unravels. You know, people often assume that when they walk away from a toxic relationship, the other person, the narcissist, remains just as powerful, just as untouchable, just as dominant as they seemed when you were caught in their web. But that's not true. It's a profound miscalculation, because narcissists, parasitic, controlling, self-obsessed as they are, don't exist in isolation. They exist through you. They feed on your energy, your reactions, your pain. They need you like a puppet needs a puppeteer. And the second you cut the strings, the whole act collapses. So here's the fundamental truth. When you leave, they fall. Narcissists thrive on control. And that control is fundamentally tied to proximity. They are not self-sustaining. They require a host, a source of emotional energy to validate their existence. This is why they seek to keep people close, ensuring that their sphere of influence remains intact. When you are within their reach, they can manipulate, gaslight, provoke, and extract the attention they so desperately need. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment of engagement is an opportunity for them to assert dominance and reaffirm their inflated sense of self-importance. A narcissist's power doesn't come from within, it comes from the reactions they elicit from others. They test boundaries, push limits, and create emotional turmoil, not just for the sake of it, but because those reactions fuel them. They thrive on admiration, but more than that, they thrive on control. If they can make you angry, they win. If they can make you question yourself, they win. If they can keep you emotionally entangled in their world, they win. This is why distance is such a threat to them. It cuts off their supply without your presence. They are left alone with themselves, a reality they find unbearable. The way a narcissist maintains control when you are close is through a cycle of manipulation. They use tactics such as love bombing, devaluation, and intermittent reinforcement to keep you psychologically tethered. Love bombing is the overwhelming affection, praise, and attention that hooks you in, making you feel special and needed. Then comes the devaluation, where they slowly chip away at your confidence, making you doubt yourself and rely more on their validation. The unpredictability of their behavior keeps you in a state of emotional disarray, always trying to regain their approval or avoid their wrath. This is how they keep you in their orbit, by making their approval the center of your emotional world. When you are physically close, they can gauge your responses, adjust their tactics, and manipulate the situation to their advantage. They read your body language, pick up on your insecurities, and tailor their actions to extract the most emotional energy from you. This is why they often resist giving you space, why they insist on keeping communication lines open even after a breakup, why they create drama just to pull you back in. The closer you are, the more they can control the narrative, distort reality, and keep you second-guessing yourself. Being in their presence also means being subjected to their reality distortion field. Narcissists are masters at rewriting history, shifting blame, and making you feel responsible for their actions. They create a version of events that serves their interests, and as long as you are within their reach, they can enforce that version upon you. They will convince you that their mistreatment is your fault, that their rage is justified, that you are overreacting. They erode your perception of reality bit by bit until you find yourself doubting what you once knew to be true. This is a form of psychological captivity, and it is only effective as long as you remain within their grasp. Proximity also allows them to weaponize their emotions. They use guilt, fear, and obligation to keep you compliant. They may play the victim, painting themselves as misunderstood or mistreated, making you feel responsible for their well-being. They may use intimidation, explosive anger, or passive-aggressive behavior to keep you on edge. They may use triangulation, bringing other people into the dynamic to create jealousy or competition. All of these tactics rely on the ability to see, hear, and sense your reactions in real time. If you are physically present, they can fine-tune their approach, shifting between charm and cruelty as needed to maintain control. Even in relationships where physical proximity is not constant, narcissists will find ways to maintain psychological proximity. They will flood your phone with messages, insist on frequent check-ins, or use social media to keep themselves in your mind. If direct contact is not possible, they may resort to indirect control, spreading rumors, using mutual acquaintances to send messages, or creating situations that force you to engage with them. Their goal is always the same, to make sure that even if you are not physically near, they still occupy space in your thoughts. What is particularly insidious about a narcissist's need for proximity is that they will disguise it as love, care, or concern. They will say they just want to talk, that they need closure, that they miss you. They will frame their attempts to keep you close as a sign of how much they value you. But make no mistake, this is not about love. It is about control. A narcissist does not want you near because they cherish you. They want you near because they need you to validate their existence. Your presence is what sustains their illusion of superiority. And they will do whatever it takes to ensure that you remain within their reach.